microplastics. Is it this part? Should we start from here?
Yeah, we can start from here. We did this, but we'll revise from here only.
Fair enough. Okay.
Link. Okay.
Okay. Right. So, plastic and microplastics. Researchers found huge amounts of microplastics in the Arctic snow. The plastic problem: up to 12 million tons of plastics are thought to enter the world's ocean every year. Plastic fragments were found even in the guts of animals living more than 10 kilometers below the ocean surface. Then, several recent studies have established the presence of microplastics in groundwater in US. Right? A study estimated that that the average human ends up consuming at least 50,000 particles of microplastics in food every year. Right? So this is about plastic problem. Microplastics, definition ये है, microplastics are defined as the shred of plastic which is less than 5 mm in length. ये important है. Microplastics are less than 5 mm in length. And microplastics come from from a variety of sources, including from large plastic debris. Microbeads, a type of microplastic, tiny pieces of polythene, are very tiny pieces of plastic that are added to health and beauty products such as some cleansers and toothpaste, cooling crystals. Even so, manufactured microbeads are not a major contributor to microplastic pollution. One of the main contributors to this pollution instead is plastic waste, 90% of which is not recycled. However, their impact on tiny marine organisms is significant since their injection leaves them starved. Let's solve this question. Why is there a great concern about the microbeads that are released in environment? They are considered harmful to marine ecosystem, considered to cause skin cancer in children, are small enough to be absorbed by the crop plants in irrigated fields. They are often found to be used as food adulterants. Answer क्या है? Guys, anybody?
Option A.
Right. So it is, we have read it right just a while back, considered harmful to the marine ecosystem. Then comes microplastics in drinking water, not a health risk for now, WHO says. In its first report in the effects of microplastics on human health, WHO said the level of microplastics in drinking water is not yet dangerous for humans, but called for more research in the potential future risk. WHO said the microplastics larger than 150 micrometers are not likely to be absorbed by the human body, but the chance of absorbing very small microplastic particles, including nano-sized particles, could be higher. Right? So WHO says microplastics larger than 150 micrometers are not likely to be absorbed by the human body. Like nano-sized particles can be absorbed. Right? Guys, I'll be going a little fast. मतलब जहाँ पे important points नहीं है, so just let me know if I'm going too fast and somewhere if you have not understood, you can stop me there and we can read the same parts again. ठीक है. So then comes plastic waste in road construction. Polybend is a fine powder of recycled and modified plastic waste. This mixture is mixed with the bitumen that is used to lay roads. So polybend is mixed with bitumen. Polybend is a fine powder of recycled and modified plastic waste. Then blends of polybend and bitumen, when used to lay roads, enhance the bitumen's water repellent properties and help to increase road life by a factor of 3. So bitumen has a water repellent property, and when it is used to lay in laying roads, it increases the road life by a factor of 3. Then comes effect of plastic waste, impact on environment. Conventional plastics, right from their manufacture to their disposal, are a major problem to the environment. The land gets littered by plastic bag garbage and becomes unhygienic. Conventional plastics have been associated with reproductive problems in both humans and wildlife. Dioxin, highly carcinogenic and toxic. It's a byproduct of the manufacturing process, is one of the chemicals believed to be passed on through breast milk to the nursing infant. So, ये important है. Dioxin is a byproduct of manufacturing process. It is the chemicals which is passed on through breast milk to the nursing infant, right? Burning of plastics, especially PVC, releases Yes, burning of plastic releases dioxin and furan into the atmosphere. Right? PVC when burnt releases dioxin and furan. Dioxins are environmental pollutants. They belong to the so-called dirty dozen. So it belongs to dirty dozen, a group of dangerous chemicals known as persistent organic pollutants, POPs. The name dioxin is often used for the family of structurally and chemically related polychlorinated dibenzoparadioxins, PCDDs. So dioxins is often used for the family of structurally and chemically related PCDDs and polychlorinated dibenzofurans, PCDFs. Okay. Polychlorinated dibenzo, one is paradioxins and the other one is dibenzofurans. So they belong, dioxins belongs to this family. These are similarly structured chemically. Right? Then plastic bags can also contaminate foodstuffs due to leaching of toxic dyes and transfer of pathogens. Careless disposal of plastic bags chokes drains, blocks the porosity of the soil and causes problems for the groundwater recharge. Right? And plastic disturbs the soil microbe activity. The terrestrial and aquatic animals misunderstand plastic garbage as food items, swallow them and die. Plastic bags deteriorate soil fertility as it forms part of manure and remains in the soil for years. So disturbs microbe activity and deteriorates soil fertility, causes problems in groundwater recharge. Guys, anything to be added here?
Right.
No, so moving on, other impacts. Health impacts are exposure to waste that handled improperly can cause skin irritations, respiratory problems, blood infections, growth problems, and even reproductive issues. Soil and groundwater pollution, land and aquatic animals consuming styrofoam, right? And cigarette butts have consuming styrofoam and cigarette butts have been known to cause deaths in marine animals. Animals are also at risk of poisoning while consuming grasses near contaminated areas or landfills as the toxins seep into the soil. Then comes issues with treatment and disposal of solid waste. Open dumps. Open dumps refer to uncovered areas that are used to dump solid waste of all kind. The waste is untreated, uncovered, and non-segregated. It is the breeding ground for flies, rats, and other insects that spread disease. The rainwater runoff from these dumps contaminates nearby land and water, thereby spreading diseases. That is about open dumps and inadequate infrastructure, according to the 12th schedule of the 74th Constitution Amendment Act of 1992, which is urban local bodies are responsible for keeping cities and towns clean. Deals with ULBs, we know 74th Constitution Amendment Act. However, most ULBs lack adequate infrastructure and face various strategic and institutional weakness, such as poor institutional capacity, financial constraints, and a lack of political will. So ULBs are facing these problems, that is poor institutional capacity, financial constraints, and lack of political will. So that is about inadequate infrastructure. Then comes landfills. It is a pit that is dug in the ground. So this is landfill, opposite to the open dumps, right? The garbage is dumped and the pit is covered with soil every day. It is covered with soil every day, thus preventing the breeding of flies and rats. After the landfill is full, the area is covered with a thick layer of mud and the site can thereafter be developed as a parking lot or a park. Right? All types of waste are dumped into landfills, and when water seeps through them, it gets contaminated and in turn pollutes the surrounding area. So this is the problem with the landfills. This contamination of groundwater and the soil through landfills is known as leaching. Right? Anything to be added here? Right. Moving on. Sanitary landfill. Sanitary landfill is more hygienic and built methodically to solve the problem of leaching. So, the sanitary landfill, it is more hygienic and built methodically. These are lined with materials that are impermeable, right, such as plastics and clay, and are also built over impermeable soil. Constructing a sanitary landfill is very costly. That's about sanitary landfill. Basically, most important point here is they are lined with materials which are impermeable. Right? Anything to be added here, guys? Moving on, incineration plants. The process of burning waste is in large furnaces at high temperature is known as incineration. Right? Burning waste in large furnaces. In these plants, recyclable material is segregated and the rest of the material is burnt. Right? Recyclable material is segregated. The burning garbage is not a clean process, as it produces tons of toxic ash and pollutes the air and water. At present, incineration is kept as the last resort and is used mainly for treating infectious waste. Right? That is incineration. Then comes pyrolysis. So we have discussed this before also. Incineration is in presence of oxygen and pyrolysis in absence of oxygen. It is a process of combustion in the absence of oxygen or the material burnt under a controlled atmosphere of oxygen. Right? It is an alternative to incineration. The gas and liquid thus obtained can be used as fuels. Pyrolysis of carbonaceous waste like firewood, coconut, palm waste, corn cobs, cashew shells, rice husk, paddy straw, and sawdust yields charcoal, along with products like tar, methyl alcohol, acetic acid, acetone, and fuel gas. So these are the byproducts of pyrolysis, which is charcoal, tar, methyl alcohol, acetic acid, acetone, and fuel gas. Right? Anything to be added here, guys? Okay, let's see the question. In the context of which one of the following are the terms pyrolysis and plasma gasification mentioned? Right. So extraction of earth element, natural gas extraction technologies, hydrogen fuel based automobiles, waste to energy technologies. Somebody wants to answer?
Waste to energy technologies, right?
That's right. So let's see the explanation. Plasma gasification is an extreme thermal process using plasma, which converts organic matter into syngas, which is primarily made of hydrogen and carbon monoxide. So plasma gasification is a thermal process which uses plasma to convert organic matter into syngas. That is plasma gasification. Right? Then comes to composting. Composting is a biological process, right, in which microorganisms, mainly fungi and bacteria, decompose degradable organic waste into humus-like substance in the presence of oxygen. So it's a natural decomposition method. It uses microorganisms, mainly fungi and bacteria, and it decomposes the degradable organic waste into humus-like substance in the presence of oxygen. This finished product, which looks like soil, is high in carbon and nitrogen. So this finished product is high in carbon and nitrogen and is an excellent medium for growing plants. It increases the soil's ability to hold water and makes the soil easier to cultivate. It helps the soil retain more plant nutrients. Anything to be added here, guys? Right, moving on. Vermiculture. It is also known as earthworm farming. Vermiculture is earthworm farming. In this method, earthworms are added to the compost. These worms break the waste and added excreta of the worms make the compost very rich in nutrients. So, vermiculture is earthworm farming. Then comes waste to energy plant. Waste to energy is the process of generating energy in the form of electricity and heat from the waste. So this is waste to energy, which is process of generating energy from waste. Step 1, segregation of how do they do this? Segregation of biodegradable or wet waste from dry waste. Step 2 is municipalities can use wet waste to produce compost and biogas in biomethanation plants. And step 3 is the dry waste after removing recyclable elements goes to waste to energy plants. The inorganic material, that is the dry waste, is processed as refuse derived fuel, which has a calorific value of 25,000 kilojoules per kg. This waste, RDF, usually taken from industrial or commercial sites, is burned to produce electricity. So this inorganic material is processed as a refuse-derived fuel. Right? It has a high calorific value, and this waste RDF, usually taken from industrial or commercial sites, is burned to produce electricity. This RDF is used in the production of electricity. Refused derived fuel is a renewable energy source that ensures waste simply is not thrown into a landfill. Right? Anything to be added here, guys? Okay, moving on. So something we have to remember here is RDF, refused derived fuel. Right? Advantages of WTE plants. So waste to energy plants. The dependence on fossil. Yes, somebody wants to say something. Right. Advantages of waste to energy plants. Dependence on fossil fuels and foreign countries will be reduced, right, because of the waste to energy, and dual purpose will be saved. That is, waste to energy and a reduction in the volume of waste for disposal. So both are served here, and area required for waste disposal will be minimized. Energy obtained is clean and renewable. These are the advantages of waste to energy plants. Then comes challenges associated with waste to energy plants in India. Cost of operation is high because India is heavily dependent on foreign countries for technology, right? Nature of waste. So WTE plant requires fine or inorganic material with less than 5% moisture and less than 5% soil content, whereas the moisture and inert content in Indian municipal solid waste is 15 to 20%. Right? So for WTE plants, we need fine inorganic material that has less than 5% moisture and less than 5% soil content. But Indian municipal solid waste has 15 to 20%. Segregation at the source. So since segregation at the source doesn't happen in the city, the collected waste materials need to be sieved, which adds up to the additional costs. Right? So the segregation also adds up to the additional cost. Then low calorific value for electricity generation. Silt and soil particles can reduce the calorific value. Right? So power tariff. The tariff at which the power is purchased by WTE plants is around 7 to 8 kilowatt hour, which is higher than the rupees 3 to 4 per kilowatt hour generated through coal and other means. So the power tariff for energy generated from WTE plants is higher than the coal generated power. So this is 3 to 4 rupees per kilowatt hour, and for WTE plants it is 7 to 8 rupees per kilowatt hour. Anything to be added here, guys?
Yeah, yesterday I think we discussed about Polycrack too. Polycrack initiative by Indian Railways.
Yes.
Dedicated to convert waste to energy.
Right. Right. Yes, we spoke about polycracking, polyclathing. ठीक. So, moving on. Then comes measures taken to manage solid waste. Solid Waste Management Rules 2016. Right? These replace the Municipal Solid Waste Management Rules 2000. Management Rules 2000. So the latest one is 2016, and these rules are now applicable beyond municipal areas and extended to urban agglomerations. किसी को पता है what are urban agglomerations?
Yeah.
Does anybody know the definition of urban agglomeration?
Right. I think we have discussed this that there is this wheel and spoke model, right, where we talk about how smart cities का जो development होगा that would also
Correct.
develop the nearby area. So when we include those nearby areas and look at it
Yes,
from an integral view, it's a urban agglomeration.
correct. So these new rules that SWM rules 2016 is applicable to municipal areas and extended to urban agglomerations. Responsibilities of generators have been introduced to segregate waste in 3 streams before handing it over to the collectors. One is wet, biodegradable. The other one is dry, plastic, paper, metal, wood, etc. Then domestic hazard waste. These are diapers, napkins, empty containers of cleaning agents, mosquito repellents, etc. So we have 3 streams of segregating the waste: wet, dry, and hazardous waste. Right? Then comes segregation at source. Source segregation of waste has been mandated to channelize the waste to wealth by recovery, reuse, and recycle. In case of an event or gathering of more than 100% at any licensed or unlicensed place, the organizer will have to ensure segregation of waste at source and handing over of segregation of waste to waste collector or agency as specified by the local authority. Right? So any gathering should take the responsibility of the segregation of waste or give it to hand it over to any waste collector or agency. All hotels and restaurants will also be required to segregate biodegradable waste and set up a system of collection to ensure that such food waste is utilized for composting. Right? So they have to, hotels and restaurants should ensure food waste is utilized for composting or biomethanation. The rules mandate that all resident welfare and market associations and gated communities with an area of above 5,000 square kilometers will have to segregate waste at, okay, some part is missing, I guess. Let's leave it here. They have to hand over recyclable material to authorized pickers and recyclers or the urban local body. Right? Recyclable material has to be handed over to rack pickers or urban local bodies. Recyclers or urban local bodies. Anything to be added here, guys? Right, moving on. Collect back scheme for packing waste. So as per the rules, brand owners who sell or market their products in packing material which are non-biodegradable should put in place a system to collect back the packing waste generated due to their production. Right? So they have to have a
extended producer's responsibility.
That's right.
EPR.
That's right. Correct. This is EPR. User fee for collection. Municipal authorities will levy user fee for collection, disposal, and processing for bulk generators. So for bulk generators, user fee is levied. Then as per the rules, the generator will have to pay user fee to the waste collector and a spot fine for littering and non-segregation, the quantum of which will be decided by the local body. So user fee, it will be decided by the local bodies, and user fee is given to the waste collector and a spot fine for littering and non-segregation. Right? This is decided by the local bodies. That's about user fee. Then comes waste processing and treatment. Biodegradable waste should be processed and disposed of through composting or biomethanation. Right? Rules have mandated bioremediation or capping of old and abandoned dump sites within 5 years. So rules have mandated bioremediation or capping of old and abandoned dump sites within 5 years. Waste processing facilities will have to be set up by all local bodies. That is, population of 1 million or more. They should set up within 2 years. Below 1 million within 3 years, and under 0.5 million. So this is the time limit given. Anything to be added here? Okay, moving on. Promotion of waste to energy. It mandates all industrial units using fuel and located within 100 kilometers from a solid waste based refuse derived fuel plant, RDF plant, to make so it mandates all industrial units using fuel and located within 100 kilometers from a solid waste based RDF plant to make arrangements within 6 months from the date of notification of these rules to replace at least 5% of their fuel requirement by RDF so produced. So any industrial unit which is nearby the RDF plant should make arrangements within 6 months from the date of notification to replace at least 5% of their fuel requirement by RDF. Right? Ministry of New and Renewable Energy should facilitate infrastructure creation, right, for waste to energy plants and provide appropriate subsidy or incentives for such waste to energy plants. Is anything to be added here? Okay. So to promote waste to energy, they have mandated industries nearby RDF plants to use only RDF power, energy, and Ministry of New and Renewable Energy should facilitate infrastructure for creation of WTE plants. Right. Moving on, revision of parameters. So landfill sites shall be 100 meters away from a river, 200 meters from a pond, 500 to 200 meters away from highways, habitations, public parks and water supply wells, at 20 kilometers from airports or airways. So these are the rules for a landfill site. Emission standards are completely amended and include parameters for dioxins, furans, reduced limits for particulate matter from 150 to 100 and now 50. Right? They have the standards are these. Emission standards are amended. That is. Parameters for dioxins, furans, and they have reduced limits for the particulate matter. They have reduced it to 50 now. Also, the compost standards have been amended to align with fertilizer control order. Right. Right. Anything to be added here, guys? Okay. Let's solve this question. As per the Solid Waste Management Rules 2016 in India, which one of the following statements is right? Right. Waste generator has to segregate waste in 5 categories. The rules are applicable to notified urban local bodies, notified towns, and all industrial townships only. The rules provided for exact and elaborate criteria for the identification of sites for landfills and waste processing facilities. It is mandatory on the part of the waste generator that the waste generator is in one district cannot be moved to another district. So, guys, anybody wants to answer this question? And if you can, try to tell us how you have eliminated the options as well. Okay, we have seen that. Yeah, somebody wants to speak. हाँ, तो हमने अभी थोड़ी देर पहले पढ़ा ये 3 कैटेगरीज हैं वेस्ट जनरेटेड, right? That is like wet, dry, and hazardous waste. And rules are applicable to notified urban local bodies, notified townships, and all industrial townships only. Only तो नहीं होगा, है ना? We have seen municipal townships and all the areas around the municipalities, that is urban agglomerations. है ना? Then rules provide for exact and elaborate criteria for identification of sites for landfills and waste processing facilities. ये तो सही है, like they have mentioned landfills का rules, and it is mandatory on the part of waste generator that the waste generated in one district. हाँ, ये थोड़ा like confusing लग रहा है that you cannot move the waste from one district to other district, but I think it is not right because you never know, in order to dispose of waste, they have to move the waste generated from one part to another part, right? शायद मुझे ये गलत लग रहा है. आंसर तो सी है, इसमें कोई एक्सप्लेनेशन नहीं दिया है. Somebody wants to speak about point D. Do they have any idea कि डिस्ट्रिक्ट टू डिस्ट्रिक्ट क्यों नहीं मूव कर सकते हैं?
नहीं, ये गलत है ना. I think आप move कर सकते हैं ना?
अच्छा राइट ठीक है हाँ
Actually, yeah, generally in practicality हम एक जो इसमें एक important component है वो ये कि आसपास SEZ और industrial park भी होते हैं. इस कारण से whenever we are actually depositing waste now, we are looking for a buffer zone rather than a specific area to create or uphold any activity related to waste to conversion energy या सीधे waste disposal. इसलिए this waste generated by any one district can be moved to another district. Pehla, if that district is coming or is touching near SEZ or industrial park, or we have created or taken around 30 like 10 12 districts ले लिए, then we created a sort of buffer zone.
Right. Okay. So moving on, constitution of Central Monitoring Committee. Central Monitoring Committee under the chairmanship of Secretary, Ministry of Environment and MOFCC, to monitor the overall implementation of the rules. Right. So who is this Central Monitoring Committee? It is headed by under the chairmanship of Secretary. MOFCC ka Secretary will be heading this central monitoring system for the overall implementation of the rules. Then promoting use of compost. Ministry of Chemical and Fertilizers, right, should provide market development assistance on city compost. And Ministry of Agriculture should provide flexibility in fertilizer control, order for manufacture and sale of compost, propagating use of compost on farmland. So, two ministries are involved. Chemical and Fertilizer, it should provide market development assistance on city compost, and Agriculture, it should provide flexibility in fertilizer control order for manufacturing and sale of compost. Right. Anything to be added here? Should I move to the next one? Okay. So other features, integration of rag pickers, waste pickers and kabadi walas from the informal sector to the formal sector by the state government. ये तो बहुत important है. And zero tolerance for throwing, burning or burying the solid waste generated on streets, open public spaces, outside the generator's premises or in the drain or water bodies. Then the manufacturers or brand owners of sanitary napkins are responsible for awareness for proper disposal of such waste by the generator. Land for construction of sanitary landfills in hilly areas will be identified in plain areas within 25 kilometers. Right? So land for the construction of sanitary landfills in hilly areas will be identified in the plain areas within 25 kilometers. Right? Anything to be added here? Okay, moving to the next one. Biomedical Waste Management and Handling Rules 2016. ये भी 2016 है biomedical waste. Biomedical waste comprises human and animal anatomical waste and treatment apparatus like needles used in healthcare facilities, HCFs, hospitals, laboratories, blood banks, immunization programs. So this is the definition of biomedical waste. It comprises of human and animal anatomical waste and treatment apparatus. Biomedical waste management rules is an improvement in to 1998 rules. So solid waste management ka 2000 rules have been amended and in 2016, and in 1998 wala amendment hoke 2016 they have revised again. Correct. Then comes Salient Features of Biomedical Waste Management Rules 2016. Phase out the use of chlorinated plastic bags, gloves and blood bags within 2 years. Phase out chlorinated plastic bags. Right? किसी को idea है what are chlorinated plastic bags? ठीक. So pre-treatment of laboratory waste, microbiological waste, blood samples through sterilization on site. So there has to be pre-treatment through sterilization on site. Then establish a barcode system for bags or containers containing biomedical waste for disposal. Biomedical waste has been classified into 4 categories. Instead, 10 to into 4 categories instead of 10 to improve segregation of waste at source. Right, state government to provide land for setting up common biomedical waste treatment and disposal facility. No occupier shall establish on-site treatment and disposal facility if a service of it is available at a distance of 75 kilometers. Right, so no occupier shall establish on-site treatment and disposal facility if a service of it is available at a distance of 75 kilometers. Operators of a common biomedical waste treatment and disposal facility to ensure the timely collection of biomedical waste from the HCFs. Vaccination camps, blood donation camps, etc. will come under the ambit of these rules. Right? Anything to be added here, guys? Okay. Guys, is it fine? Is the speed fine, or should I slow down a bit?
It's fine now, Dikti.
Okay, right. So moving on, procedure to be followed. The hospitals are required to put in place the mechanisms for effective disposal, either directly or through common biomedical waste treatment and disposal facilities. The hospitals servicing 1,000 patients or more per month are required to obtain authorization and segregate biomedical waste into categories as specified by the rules. Guys, just give me 5 seconds.
Why it's not coming, baby? She's coming back in a few seconds.
Sorry guys, let's continue. Yeah. So procedure to be followed. Hospitals are required to put in place mechanism for effective disposal, either directly or through common biomedical waste treatment and disposal facilities. Hospitals serving 1,000 patients or more per month are required to obtain authorization and segregate biomedical waste into categories as specified by the rules. Yeah, for example, syringe, needles, and blood soiled bandages should all be disposed of in a red colored bag or bin where it will later be incinerated, destroyed by burning. If body fluids are present, the material needs to be incinerated. So these are the procedures to be followed. Anything to be added here, guys? Right. Moving on, problems of unscientific biomedical waste disposal. 85% of the hospital waste is non-hazardous, right? Sorry. 15% is infectious or hazardous. Mixing of hazardous and non-hazardous waste makes the entire waste hazardous. Improper disposal can lead to many diseases in animals as well as humans. It encourages recycling of prohibited disposables and drugs, which will further spread infections. It also develops resistant microorganisms, that is antimicrobial resistance, EMR. Right? So basically 85% of the hospital waste is non-hazardous and 15% is hazardous. So it has to be kept segregated. Anything to be added here? Okay. Moving on, common biomedical waste treatment facilities. Currently in India, there are around 200 common biomedical waste treatment facilities in operation, which is inadequate. Central CPCB has marked common biomedical waste treatment facilities as a key factor in the race to contain the coronavirus outbreak. Okay. CPCB's order mandates that isolation wards, sample collection centers, and laboratories are mandated to keep a separate COVID-19 waste collection bin in a temporary storage room, and CBWTFs are to identify this separately labeled waste for priority treatment and disposal. According to NGT, even though 20 years had passed since the Supreme Court issued directions on dealing with solid waste management, no progress was made by states. That's it. Anything to be added here, guys? Moving on. Waste minimization circles. So waste minimization circles help small and medium industrial clusters in waste minimization in their industrial plants. This is assisted by World Bank with the MOFCC acting as a nodal ministry. The project is being implemented with the assistance of National Productivity Council, New Delhi. Right? The initiative aims to realize the objectives of Policy Statement for Abatement of Pollution 1992, which states that the government should educate citizens about environmental risks, economic and health dangers of the resource degradation, and the real economic cost of natural resources. Basically, aim of WMC is to realize the objectives of Policy Statement for Abatement of Pollution 1992. The policy also recognizes that citizens and non-government organizations play a role in environmental monitoring, therefore enabling them to supply the regulatory system. बस इतना याद रखना है. WMC, it is assisted by World Bank, nodal agency is MOFCC, and implemented with the assistance of National Productivity Council, New Delhi. Anything to be added here? Okay, moving on. Composite Waste Management Index 2.0. It is released by Niti Aayog. Index is an attempt to inspire states and UTs towards efficient and optimal utilization of water. Right? Index provides useful information for states and also for concerned central ministries or departments. State ranking में Gujarat stands first and Andhra Pradesh stands second. Union territories for the first time submitted their data in CMMI 2.0. Puducherry declared top ranker. 80% of the states assessed on index are improving. Right? Anything to be added here, guys? We have finished this chapter. Should we move to the next one?
Yes, let's start it.
So then comes hazardous waste. Any substance that is present or released in the environment and causes substantial damage to public health and welfare of the environment is called hazardous waste. Any hazardous substance could exhibit any one or more of the following characteristics, which is toxicity, ignitability, corrosivity, or reactivity. So these are the characteristics of hazardous substance: toxicity, ignitability, corrosivity, and reactivity. Thus, any waste that contains hazardous or very hazardous substance is called hazardous waste. Hazardous waste can originate from various sources such as household, local areas, urban, industry, agriculture, construction activity, hospitals and laboratories, power plants, and other sources. POPs, persistent organic pollutants. They are defined as chemical substances that persist in the environment, bioaccumulate through the food web, and pose a risk of causing adverse effects to human health and the environment. So this is the definition of POPs. That is, they persist in environment, they bioaccumulate through food web, and cause a risk of causing adverse effects on human health and environment. POPs are chemicals of global concern due to their potential for long-range transport, persistent in the environment, ability to biomagnify and bioaccumulate in ecosystems, have significant negative effects on the human health and environment. So these are the characteristics of POPs. The most commonly encountered POPs are organochlorine pesticides, right? Such as dichloro diphenyl trichloroethane, that is DDT. Then endosulfan, right? Then polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, resistant to extreme temperature and pressure. PCBs were used widely in electrical equipment like capacitors and transformers. So this PCBs, right? We have these PCB boards, polychlorinated biphenyl, right? So these are used in the electrical equipment like capacitors and transformers. So then dioxins, we have read about this before also. Toxins produced by, these are toxic byproducts produced when organic matter is burned. Right? We have read it a while back. Dioxins and furans. When organic matter is burned, these are produced. Right? These are the common POPs, that is DDT, endosulfan, PCBs, and dioxins. DDT was widely used a few decades ago as an effective pesticide and insecticide. It was later identified as POP, and its usage was phased out in almost all developed countries. DDT is banned for agricultural use in India. However, it continues to be used for fumigation against mosquitoes, disease vector control in several places in India, right? So although in agriculture it is completely banned, but it is being used in fumigation against mosquitoes, disease vector control in India. Yes, so that's about POPs. Guys, anything to be added here?
Yeah, we have seen bioaccumulation, biomagnification before also. So थोड़ा सा
Yes.
note करना है that POP is about bioaccumulation.
Correct. हाँ guys, किसी को POPs का कोई convention याद है क्या?
Stockholm
That's right.
Convention.
That's right. So for POP, it is Stockholm Convention. Then comes persistent organic pollutants, POPs. Persistent organic pollutants are chemicals of global concern. So इसमें ये characteristics है. These are long range transport. They are persistent in the environment and biomagnify and bioaccumulate. Right? Biomagnification पता है आपको, like, and bioaccumulation also. And then high significant negative effects on human health and the environment. So these are the 4 characteristics. The environmental treaty that aims to eliminate POPs is Stockholm Convention, right? Then POP examples are DDT, diphenyl trichloroethane. Right? Insecticide, DDT is banned for agriculture use in India, continues to be used for fumigation against mosquitoes. Then endosulfan, it's an insecticide. Endosulfan is an insecticide. Then polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, resistant to extreme temperature and used widely in electrical equipment. Then dioxins, it's a byproduct when organic matter is burnt. Then comes regulation of POPs rules 2018. MOFCC has notified that a regulation of persistent organic pollutants in 2018 under the provision of EPA 1986. So, a POP regulation is under EPA 1986. The rules prohibit the manufacture, trade, use, import, and export of 7 chemicals, namely chlordicone and hexabromobiphenyl and hexabromodiphenyl ether and heptabromodiphenyl ether, commercial octa BDE, and tetrabromodiphenyl ether and pentabromodiphenyl ether, commercial penta BDE, and pentachlorobenzene, and hexabromo, cyclododecane, and hexachlorobutadiene. किसी को is like, does anybody have any idea about this? I think this was one of the previous year questions as well. Does anybody remember? हाँ, out of these 7, इस चीज पे कोई PYQ आया है क्या पहले? ठीक है. Anyways, like if you know any mnemonic or anything related, how to remember these 7 chemicals, because these are the, I mean, according to 2018 rules, these are the prohibited chemical elements. Sorry, chemicals. ये थोड़ा we have to remember. And ratification process would enable India to access Global Environment Facility financial resources. So to ratify, that is to restrict the manufacture, trade, and use of these 7 chemicals, we can access Global Environment Facility financial resources.
या इसमें जो मतलब मेजर तो सारे साइड ही है, मतलब इंसेक्टिसाइड फंगिसाइड है, बट ये जो कमर्शियल ऑक्टा बीडी और पेंटा बीडी है ये फ्लेम रिटार्डेंट बनाता है. सो
Okay.
नेल पॉलिश या फिर जो इबुमेन उसमें जब भी हम फ्लेम रेजिस्टेंस देखते हैं वो इनके थ्रू ही आता था.
Got it. Right. So these are the regulation of POPs rules 2018 under EPA 1986. Anything to be added? Should I move to the next one?
हाँ, नेक्स्ट चलते हैं.
ठीक है. Chlorinated hydrocarbons, organochlorides or perfluorochlorides. So CHC. हाँ, आप पढ़ दो.
So CHCs hydrocarbons in which one or more hydrogen atoms have been replaced by chlorine. For example, DDT, Endosulfon, chloroform, carbon tetrachloride, etc. अभी हमने ऊपर भी देखा था pentachlorophene. So applications of CHC or perfluorochlorides. So they are in the production of PVC. Then you have chloroform, dichloromethane, dichloroethane, and trichloroethane, which are as useful solvents. These solvents are immiscible with water, not forming a homogeneous mixture when mixed with water, and effective in cleaning applications such as degreasing and dry cleaning. And then you have DDT, heptachlor, and endosulfon, which were widely used as pesticides. So what is the effect of CHC? एक तो bioaccumulation, biomagnification है, उससे आगे चले, so इसमें they have mentioned it more, like DDT accumulated in food chains and causes eggshell thinning in certain bird species.
Right.
कुछ add कर रहे हो?
Right. No. Go on, Raymond.
Yeah. थोड़ा सा नीचे scroll down कर दे. So in India, traces of DDT spray used 3 decades ago can still be found on the walls of homes. The residues continued to be found in mammals across the planet, and Arctic areas, particularly high levels, are found in marine animals. The traces of persistent organic pollutant are found in breast milk of several mammals. In females, the concentration is lower due to the transfer of the compounds to their offspring through lactation. Then we have organochloride. So what are organochlorides? They are hydrocarbons in which one or more hydrogen atoms have been replaced by chlorines. Then what are the application of organochlorides? So they are used in the production of PVC, a synthetic plastic polymer used to make PVC pipes. Yeah. Then we have some are useful solvents in cleaning applications such as degreasing and dry cleaning, and some of them were widely used as pesticides. Then we come on perfluoroalkyl acids or PFAS. So they are emerging persistent organic pollutants used in water stain resistant coatings for clothing fabrics, leather, upholstery, and carpets, and oil resistant coatings for paper products approved for food contact, electroplating, electron etching, etc. They are different from perfluorochlorides. Also, they have a long life and are one of the major pollutants that get stored in the glaciers. They do not biodegrade and are passed through several organisms and ecosystems. Himalayan glaciers may have higher levels of PFAS than any other glaciers in the world. And this is because of their proximity to South Asian countries, most polluted regions of the world. The glaciers are releasing PFAS into lakes, and this can lead to bioaccumulation of PFAS in fish. The consumption of contaminated fish can prove fatal for humans. Right. Then we have endosulfon. So it's an organochloride insecticide, UPWOW. It is primarily used as insecticide in agriculture. It is also used as wood preservative. Then ban on Endosulfon. Right. So India was one of the biggest producers and consumers of Endosulfon after toxicity of the pesticide came into limelight in 2001 in Kasaragod district, Kerala. It got banned. Supreme Court banned the production, distribution, and use of Endosulfon in India. Supreme Court also directed, sorry, yeah. So Supreme Court also directed Kerala government to pay rupees 500 crores compensation to over 5,000 victims. Globally, use of endosulfan is banned under Stockholm Convention on POP, and under pressure from pesticide firms, India sought remission on the ban for 10 years. India has agreed to phase out use of endosulfan by 2070. Again, a small chart on what is endosulfan. So, as you saw, endosulfan is a POP, most widely used as insecticide as well as a wood furnishing. It is a bioaccumulant. What are the effects of endosulfan? So it's neurotoxic, destroy the integrity of the nerve cells, then endocrine disruptor, delayed reproductive development, late sexual maturity, and autism, and ban on endosulfan. So the use of endosulfan is globally banned under Stockholm Convention. In India, Supreme Court banned the production, distribution, use of endosulfan in 2011, and India has agreed to phase out use of endosulfan by 2017. Then you have hazardous effects of endosulfan. So it's highly toxic and has a large potential for bioaccumulation. Substance does not leave body. Has a hazardous effect on human genetic and endocrine systems. An endocrine disruptor. So enhances the effects of estrogens, causing reproductive and developmental damage in both animals and humans. There's a delayed reproductive development, late sexual maturity, and autism, and it's neurotoxic. Destroys the integrity of the nerve cells. Then comes the laws, conventions, rules that regulate hazardous waste. So before going through this, we have three main laws, right? We have Stockholm Convention, we have the Bonn Convention, then we have Rotterdam Convention. Sorry, Basel. Stockholm, Basel, and Rotterdam. The Trinity oftenly uses SBR, right? Now, which was the latest convention which came into effect, which was developed most recently among these three? Any idea?
Basel, right?
Basel is the oldest, then comes Rotterdam, and then comes Stockholm.
Okay.
And in implementation also follows the same thing, right? Basel was more important than Stockholm or Rotterdam because Basel was related to the transfer of waste from one country to another. So rich countries were, they were throwing away their garbages in countries, specifically in African regions, and were paying those nations to store the garbage that they were throwing, right? To keep them clean and make the third world countries more dirtier, in a very simple language. So this led to a development of Basel norm, where the countries in the transboundary movement, right, they had to stop with certain elements being thrown in lower income countries in lieu of payments. But this was not enough because there were some countries, especially EU, which was against कि भाई अगर हम we are developing new instruments which are like generating such hazardous materials, we need to throw somewhere, right? Because African nation also needed money. They were in agreement that the Basel norm should completely be removed. So they then developed Rotterdam. Rotterdam is about prior informed consent, PIC. The PIC says that if a nation is, going to have a waste from another country, the source country need to give a PIC, and that PIC is basically circulated in the whole chain, right? So every port, every nation along the chain which are coming across, they have to be given this PIC, which shows कि जो waste जा रहा है source country से depositing country को, that is a legal and approved disposal. Now, After this comes Stockholm. So Stockholm का बहुत simple sense था that in late 1990s we came across that the refrigerant, the organic materials, they what we have been using from ages are not that safe, and hence we created Stockholm Convention, which was signed in 2001 and came in effect in 2004. It's the last convention of these three to come into force. Okay.
Right.
Right. So now let's study all these three in a little detail. So it's first one is Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants. It's an international environmental treaty. It came into effect in 2004. State PSC के लिए important है कि May 2004 में आया. And then it aims to eliminate or restrict the production and use of POPs. Now it has its own list. In this list, several of the listed important substances are ultrine, which was used as insecticide. Then you have heptachlor. Heptachlor was one of the major used termiticide, right, across the world. So it's including in the structure of houses and underground for organic treatment and in underground cable boxes. Then you have hexachlorobenzene. So as we saw, it's a pesticide, a solvent for pesticide. Then you have entrin. So it has been primarily used as agriculture insecticide on tobacco, apple trees, cotton, sugarcane, rice, cereal, and grains. Right. So if you see, you have tobacco, apple tree, cotton, sugarcane, rice, cereal, and grains. Which of these nations you think must have been using entry in a high amount? So obviously the developing
India,
countries, because right? Yeah,
yes,
specifically
yes.
India. Then you have polychlorinated biphenyl. So PCB's commercial utility was based largely on their chemical stability, including low flammability and physical properties, including electrical insulating properties. They are highly toxic. Then you have DDT. So it's the best known of several chlorine-containing pesticides used in the 1940s and 50s. Then comes Basal Convention, the oldest one among these three. First and foremost, the important thing is it does not address the movement of radioactive waste. Now, it's also called as control of transboundary movements of hazardous waste and their disposal. It came into force in 1992. And as of 2018, 186 states and the EU are parties to the convention. United States has signed the convention but has not ratified it. The Basel Convention is an international treaty that was designed to just a transboundary movement about hazardous waste. So it reduces the movements of hazardous waste between nations and prevent the transfer of hazardous waste from developed to less developed countries. The convention is also intended to minimize the amount and toxicity of waste generated and assist LDCs in environmentally sound management of the hazardous and other waste they generate. Now, there are shortcomings, which is toxic colonialism in the name of recycling. So, Basel Convention was focusing on regulating the trade, but not on complete ban. It does not prohibit waste exports to any location except Antarctica, right? But merely requires a notification and consent system known as PIC. So, kya is more important that except Antarctica, in any part of the world, you can send your waste, only a PIC is required. तो इसमें Arctic क्यों नहीं है? We have Antarctica over here, but we don't have Arctic over here. Why? Because we have Arctic Circle, right? So वो 8 nations decide कर लेते हैं whether we want to throw something or not amongst themselves.
Right.
Then you have many waste traders which ship hazardous waste in the guise of moving the waste to recycling destinations. You have recycling involving stripping of electronic waste, shipbreaking by desperate, unprotected workers. Further, waste from the shipping companies, old ship, hazardous asbestos, and flammable gases and oils end up on beaches in South Asia where they create pollution, occupational diseases, and hazards. So the second point is that recycling involves stripping of electronic waste, shipbreaking, etc. by desperate, unprotected workers. इसका सबसे prime example पिछले साल देखने को मिला था when that ship got stuck in the Suez Canal, right? So that shipbreaking जो करना था, most of the members or most of the say population was from India, which was employed by Saudi Arabia. So Still, there is a trade between developed and least developing or other countries for taking out the scraps out of the scraps.
Right.
Then you have Alang Ship Breaking Yard in Gujarat, which is one of the biggest ship breaking yard in the world. In 2021 budget speech, Union Finance Minister spoke about doubling the ship recycling capacity by 2024 and attracting more ships to India from Europe and Japan. Then comes the Basal Ban Amendment, which is very important. Why? Because it finally became an international law in September 2009 after Croatia ratified it. So many believed a full ban on shipment of hazardous waste was needed, including exports for recycling. It led to an adoption in the 1995 convention, which was also known as BBA or Basal Ban Amendment, which required a ratification by 3/4 of the parties to the convention to become a law. It will become a new article in the convention and will enter into force in the 97 countries after 90 days. However, countries like the US, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, South Korea, Russia, India, Brazil, and Mexico are yet to ratify the ban. The US produces the most waste per capita but has actively opposed the ban amendment. The amendment prohibits the export of hazardous waste from a list of developed countries, which are mostly OECD's countries, to developing countries. Right? The ban applies to export for any reason, including recycling. The Basal Ban Amendment is hailed as a landmark agreement for global environmental justice. So, एक छोटा question ने देके रखा, there can be no excuse for using the developing world as a dumping ground for the toxic effluent of the affluent. Examine this statement in the light of Basal Ban Amendment. So as we saw, BBA क्या है? 1995 convention का resultant. तो Basal Ban के बारे में लिखना. The second important thing is how is affluent nation still dumping? So it's all in the name of recycling लिख सकते हैं, but rather, right, that how the waste is still being exported to other nations in lieu of recycling and other purposes, right? इसमें दोनों साइड से participation है, while developing countries are getting those waste, right, which has important rare earth metals, which have important components that cannot be found or are not able to be extracted in nations such as in India. We cannot just go and extract lithium, right? So these sort of things can be arrived or derived from the waste coming from developed nations, and for developed nations they are getting the waste disposal at a minimum cost, which is completely excluding the environmental cost. So iska way forward yahi ho sakta hai that developing nations, if they are purchasing, they need to come into agreement with developed nations to create a recycling facility. So agar we are aiming at doubling our shipping recycling capacity, this should not be done entirely through the Indian budget or expenditure or from the Indian population's taxes. We need a global treaty which marks the significance that developed nations produces hotspots in the developing nation to process such waste. Right. And furthermore, implementing BPA more strictly through an international body related to UN. Right. Then we have Rotterdam Convention. किसी को अभी तक कुछ ऐड करना है क्या? Right. So as I said, Rotterdam Convention is about PIC procedure. So prior informed consent for certain hazardous chemicals and pesticides in international trade. So it's a multilateral treaty to promote shared responsibilities in relation to the importance of hazardous chemicals. The convention promotes an open exchange of information and calls on exporters of hazardous chemicals to use proper labeling, safe handling, and inform purchasers of any known restriction or bans. Signatory nations can decide whether to allow or ban the importance of chemicals listed in the treaty. इसका एक prime example है when Pakistan, अभी recent की बात है, एक दो महीने पहले की, when Pakistan was transporting certain waste from Pakistan, that is their port, Gwadar port, to China. This, while being transferred, was not informed to Indian customs. Because Pakistan was transporting waste, it had to from inform, as I said, every port which is coming through the route about the exchange, the banned material if it's carrying or any restrictions. Because it did not, India was rightfully able to corner the ship and contain it within its port near Gujarat. Right? So
Right.
remember, PIC is about Rotterdam, Basel is simply about transboundary, and Stockholm is about POP or persistent organic pollutant.
Right.
Then comes the joint meetings of the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention. So there was a joint meeting in January, February of 2021 in Geneva of three conventions. So it was COP14 to Basel, COP9 to Rotterdam, and COP9 to Stockholm. Right? Remember, Rotterdam and Stockholm, they almost came to in action in 2004, while Basel was in action from 1992. So the theme of the
Right.
meeting was Deepthi thoda sa niche.
Huh.
So the theme
Is
of
it
the
visible
mission
now?
was, yeah. It was clean planet, healthy people, sound management of chemicals and waste. Right. Then comes COP14 to Basel Convention. So it was amended the convention to include plastic waste in a legally binding framework. The new amendment would empower developing countries to refuse dumping plastic waste by others, and plastic waste included in the PIC procedure. Even though the US and a few others have not signed the accord, they cannot ship plastic waste to countries that are on board with the deal. India has already imposed a complete prohibition of import of solid plastic waste into the country. India has also made an international commitment to phase out single-use plastic. किसी को ये साल याद है phase out करने का? Audible है ना?
Yes.
Okay. So
No idea.
इसी
आप ही बता दो.
इसी साल 2022. So
Yes.
we were aiming to phase out the single-use plastic by 2022. And
Yesterday only I think we were reading about it, although it has been called out by the PM, but ऐसा कोई law नहीं बना है, stringent laws नहीं बना है to phase out the
Right.
single-use plastic.
Right. Because this particular phasing out has been brought under Plastic Waste Management Rules 2016, which is also through Environmental Protection Act 1986. Or the problem with 1986 is that it is more about centralized, right? It has more centralizing provisions than a decentralized approach. So this current say, even if India declares or central government declares, state support utna milega nahi, because they can refuse to follow the rules, right?
Correct.
Then you have COP9 Stockholm Convention. So in COP9, they decided to list dicofol in Annex A without any exemption. The PFOA was also listed with some exemptions in the Annex A of the Stockholm Committee. What is dicofol? So it's a pesticide that is chemically related to DDT. It has been used in a wide variety of industrial and domestic applications, including non-stick cookware and food processing equipment, as well as carpets, papers, and paints. Which is PFOA? So perfluorooctanoic acid is used in the process of making Teflon, used in non-stick cookware. So PFOA can stay in the environment and in the human body for long periods of time. It is an carcinogen, a liver toxicant, and the developmental toxicant, as well as an immune system toxicant. Okay. Again, then we have COP9 to Rotterdam Convention. So under the Rotterdam Convention, two new chemicals, which were acetochlor and hexabromocyclododecan, HBCD, and phorate were added in the list for mandatory PIC in international trade. Then comes, Hong Kong Convention, right? For it, I think most people must be a little bit, how to say, knowing about it, right? For it is a very commonly used powder or insecticide that are spread to remove the chewing insects, mites. So आप बिस्तर पे generally use करते हो for it.
Okay.
ठीक है.
Right.
Then we have Hong Kong Convention. So it's for the safe and environmentally sound recycling of ships, 2009. It was developed in cooperation with ILO and the parties to the Basal Convention. The convention intends to address all the issues around ship recycling, including the fact that ships sold for scrapping may contain hazardous substances such as asbestos, heavy metals, etc. It also addressed concerns raised about the working and environmental conditions at many of the world's ship recycling locations. Okay. Then we have recycling of ships bill. I think it's 2019. Okay. So the Parliament has passed the Recycling of Ships Bill 2019, which seeks to ensure environmentally sound recycling of ships and adequate safety of the yard workers. The Shipbreaking Code 2013 and the provisions of the Hong Kong Convention are present in this bill. Then we have ship recycling. So the bill is defining ship recycling as the dismantling of a ship at a facility to recover the components and materials to reuse and taking care of the hazardous materials so produced. Then you have requirements for ships. So ships should not use prohibited hazardous materials as notified. The central government may exempt certain categories of ships from this requirement, and the requirements will not apply to any warship and ships with internal volume less than 500 tons. Then comes the national authority. So the national authority will carry out periodic surveys to verify the prescribed requirements. The owner of every new ship must take an application to the national authority to obtain a certificate on the inventory of hazardous materials and recycling facilities. So ships will be recycled only in authorized recycling facilities. Each ship recycler must maintain adequate measures for emergency preparedness and safety and welfare of workers. And it also defines recycling process, which is a ship owner must first apply to national authority for a ready recycling certificate. Recycler must prepare a ship recycling plan, which would be approved by competent authority, and each ship will be recycled after obtaining written permission from the competent authority. What are the benefits? So it increased number of global ships entering Indian shipyards for recycling. The recycling of ships will boost business and employment opportunities, raise the value of our yards located at Alang in Gujarat, Mumbai Port, Kolkata Port, Azikal in Kerala. And 10% of country's secondary steel needs can be met in an eco-friendly manner from recycled ships. The facilities will become compliant to international standards. Right. Then we have Hazardous Waste Rules 2016. So the first time, rules have been made to distinguish between hazardous waste and other waste, right? So अभी हमने ऊपर पढ़ा था what are hazardous waste, so we had 4 parameters to look out, but they were generic. Here the bill is now defining the ambit of which we will be calling a waste as hazardous waste or other. So other waste include waste tire, paper waste, metal scrap, used electronic items, etc., and are recognized as a resource for recycling and reuse. तो अभी भी hazardous waste जो 4 पैरामीटर्स हमने ऊपर पढ़े थे, ignitability, corrosivity, radiativity, etc., वो अभी भी है. But however, this bill aim to separate some of the waste from those categories and bring into other waste, right? So salient features, the ambit of the rules has been expanded by including other waste. Waste management hierarchy in the sequence of priority of prevention, minimization, reuse, recycling, recovery, co-processing, and safe disposal has been incorporated, and it encourages reduction of hazardous waste generation and encourage its recycling and reusing. It specifies strict guidelines related to the import and export or even storage and transportation of hazardous waste. What the import and effort of hazardous waste? So no country can export to India hazardous waste for final disposal. This means that India only imports hazardous waste in order to recycle, reuse, or for other utilization. It specifies the procedure for importing and exporting hazardous waste to hazardous waste to and for from India. Then treatment,
इसका मतलब
storage,
ये हो सकता है ना, even with the
हाँ,
PIC, any country cannot export hazardous waste to India.
राइट. हमने जो ऊपर 6 मेथड्स अब डिस्कस कर लिए हैं, राइट, उसमें से 6 मेथड्स में से ओनली 3 मेथड्स आर अलाउड on which we can now confirm our PIC on.
Right.
Okay. Then we have the treatment, storage, and disposable facility for hazardous waste. So 2016 rules gives a clear direction of how the facility for treatment, storage, and disposal is to be established. The permission from the State Pollution Control Board is required for the layout on this regard. Then you have packaging, labeling, and transport of such waste. So extensive guidelines are provided by CPCB for the packaging and labeling. In case the waste is to be transported to a facility in a different state for its final disposal, a no objection certificate NOC is required on the part of sender from the State Pollution Control Board of both the states. ठीक है. Last line अच्छी है याद करने के हिसाब से. Then you have amendment of 2019. So it has been done keeping into consideration the ease of doing business, boosting Make in India, and simplifying the procedure under the rules, while at the same time upholding the principles of sustainable development and ensuring minimal impact on the environment. Then salient feature. So solid plastic waste has been prohibited from import into the country, including in SEZ and export-oriented units. Exporters of silk waste have now been given exemptions from requiring permission from MOEFCC. The electrical and electronic assemblies and components manufactured in and exported from India, if found defective, can now be imported back into the country without obtaining permission from MOEFCC. Industries which do not require consent under Water Act 1974 and Air Act 1981 are now exempted from requiring authorization also under the Hazardous Rules 2016. Then comes the rules for disposal of cigarette butts. So cellulose acetate is a major component on 95% of the cigarette butts along with rayon. In general, the toxicity data is not available for cellulose acetate. However, it will persist for a longer duration, and NGT has directed the CPCB to lay down guidelines pertaining to disposal of cigarette and BD butts. While the Environment Ministry had said that cigarette butts were not listed as hazardous, the Health Ministry had maintained that they were not biodegradable. Right? वो नहीं कर सकते because we know जो tobacco कर रहे हैं मतलब the farmers which are invested in tobacco farming उनको दूसरी farming पे ले जाना भी tough है, as well as the revenue that is being generated from these two is mighty. Right? I
read somewhere that ITC, although it produces a lot of products, its major revenue is from cigarettes. मतलब tobacco. Right. Tobacco is like it's one of the major component for industries, government, everyone. Yes. Can't do anything. Yes. That's right. So moving on. I think we are done with the 22nd chapter also here. Guys, should we wrap it up here today? Or do you want to do e-waste as well? आप बोलो, like if we want to continue, we can continue for a half an hour, like as usual, until 4 o'clock. E-waste है कितना बड़ा? देखते हैं. बड़ा तो है. Right, again वो सारा mention करके रखा है. Everything is right. ठीक है. I mean, we can do it tomorrow, but अगर किसी को आज करना है from the scope of time, please raise your hand or please join the conversation. Ha. Anybody would like to do it today? We can do it. That's what, like, a half an hour wouldn't harm anybody. Just let us know.
6 pages ही है.
6 pages? Should we do it then?
में तो इशू नहीं है.
ठीक.
करना है तो कर सकते हैं. कर दे.
Somebody speaking? हाँ जी प्रियांशु बोलिए.
जी आगे कभी कर लीजिए आगे कभी.
ठीक है. So the discarded and end of life electronic products ranging from computers, equipment, home appliances, audio and video products and all of their peripherals are popularly known as electronic waste. It's not hazardous if it is stored in safe storage or recycled by scientific methods or transported from one place to the other in parts or totality in the formal sector. The e-waste can, however, be considered hazardous if recycled by primitive methods. And इसलिए India में e-waste is generally considered hazardous. Why? Because around more than 90% of recycling is being done in informal sector. Right?
That's right.
So now comes the sources and health effects. So lead. Using glass panels, gasket in computer monitors, soldier in printed circuit boards and other components. ये PCB अलग है, वो PCB अलग है, ठीक है? Then we have health effects. So it tends to accumulate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, I thought this that was the PCB. सही है. हाँ, ये lead soldering भी करते हैं ना, तो lead is used in soldering as well. Yeah.
So lead tends to accumulate in the environment and has high acute and chronic effects on plants, animals, and microorganisms. They have cadmium. So it occurs in SMD chip resistors, infrared detectors, and semiconductor chips. Some old cathode ray tubes contain cadmium. तो जो हमारे science lab में लगा हुआ है, especially in colleges, it still contain cadmium. These accumulate in the human body, especially in the kidneys. Then mercury. So it's estimated that 22% of the yearly world consumption of mercury is used in electrical and electronic equipment. It's used in thermostats, sensors, relays, switches, medical equipment, lamps, mobile phones, and in batteries. It's also used in flat panel displays, will likely increase as their use replaces cathode ray tubes, CRTs. So mercury can cause damage to organs, including the brain and kidneys, as well as the fetus. The developing fetus is highly vulnerable to mercury exposure. When inorganic mercury spreads out in the water, it is transformed by methylated mercury, which bioaccumulates in living organisms and concentrates to the food chain, particularly via fish. Then you have hexavalent chromium or chromium Vl29.
ये 6 है ना, hexavalent chromium 6.
Sorry, 629. So chromium 6 is used as corrosion protector of untreated and galvanized steel plates and as a decorative or hardener for steel housing plastics, including PVC. Dioxins, which are released when PVC is burned, right?
Right.
Then chromium 6 can cause damage to DNA and is extremely toxic in the environment. Okay.
Right.
Also chromium 6 के बारे में है that the largest volume of plastic used in electronics has been PVC. And PVC elements are found in cabling and computer housings. Many computer moldings are now made with the somewhat more benign ABS plastic. Then comes barium. Barium is used in computers in the front panel of CRT to protect users from radiation. Studies have shown that short-term exposure to barium causes brain swelling. Then you have beryllium. So it's commonly found on motherboards and finger clips. Used as copper beryllium alloy to strengthen connectors and tiny plugs while maintaining electrical conductivity. The exposure to beryllium can cause lung cancer, also causes a skin disease that is characterized by poor wound healing and wart-like bumps. Then you have toners. So it's found in the plastic printer cartridge containing black and color toners. Inhalation is the primary exposure pathway, and acute exposure may lead to the respiratory tract irritation. Carbon black has been classified as a class 2B carcinogen, possibly carcinogenic to humans. Right. Then we have phosphor and additives. So phosphor, an inorganic chemical compound that is applied as a coat on the interior of the CRT faceplate. The phosphor coating on cathode ray tubes contain heavy metals such as cadmium and other rare earth metals, for example, zinc, vanadium as additives. These metals and their compounds are very toxic. Right. Then we have e-waste to increase by 2030. So अलग-अलग reports आती रहती है which shows that e-waste is to increase around 40% by 2030 according to United Nations University report, right? Then you have global e-waste, which has increased by 38% in a decade between 2020 and 2030. And then there was 53.6 million tons e-waste in 2019. That is nearly 21% increase in just 5 years. And Asia generated the greatest volume of e-waste in 2019, some around 24.9 or 25 megatons, followed by the Americas, right, north and south, 30.1 milliton, and Europe, 12 milliton. Most e-waste in 2019 consisted of small equipment, 17.4 megatons, large equipment, 13.1, and temperature exchange equipment, 10.8. Then you have less than 18% of the e-waste generated in 2019, which was collected and recycled, and e-waste consisting of gold, silver, copper, platinum, and other high-value recoverable materials worth at least $57 billion was mostly dumped or burned rather than being collected for treatment and reuse. Right. So इसमें से वापस से एक बार ऊपर से देख ले, तो जो I think 2-3 important figures है वो ये है. Expected increase है 2020 और 30 के बीच में 38%. Then Asia is having greatest volume, which is around 25 million tons, right? Almost 50% ज़्यादा है अमेरिका से, दोनों कॉन्टिनेंट मिला के. And then the third important, I think important figure is that we have all seen nearly 21% increase of e-waste in 5 years. So 3 important point है. उसके अलावा अगर आपको थोड़ा बहुत और लिखना हो, so less than 18% of the e-waste which is generated in 2019 was collected and recycled. Right. ठीक है. So we have e-waste in India. So it's generating more than 30 lakh metric tons of electronic waste every year, with Mumbai and Delhi NCR accounting for the biggest chunk. Bangalore, Chennai, Kolkata, Ahmedabad, Hyderabad, Pune, Surat, and Nagpur are other important cities generating a substantial amount of e-waste. Nagpur, right. Among the 8 largest e-waste generating states, Maharashtra ranks first, Tamil Nadu second, Andhra Pradesh third, Uttar Pradesh fourth, Delhi fifth, Gujarat sixth, and Karnataka seventh. Then you have percentage wise share. So around 20% Maharashtra. Then you have Tamil Nadu around 13%, Andhra Pradesh around 12.5%, Uttar Pradesh around 10%, right? And by city wise, Mumbai is generating the highest tons per year, which is around 24%. Delhi following it by 21%, Bangalore 10%, Chennai 9%, and then other follows. So over half of the e-waste generated in the developed world are exported to developing countries, mainly to China, India, and Pakistan, where copper, iron, silicon, nickel, and gold are recovered during recycling. Unlike developed countries, which have specifically built facilities for recycling of e-waste, recycling in developing countries often involves manual participation, thus exposing workers to toxic substance. And there are 300 plus authorized recyclers of e-waste in India. However, the former recycling capacity remains underutilized, as the large majority of the waste is still handled by the informal sector, more than 90%. Then comes heavy metal toxicity and methods of their prevention. So toxic metals are dispersed in the environment through metals melting, industrial emissions, burning of organic waste, automobiles, and coal-based power generation. Heavy metals can be carried to places far away from their source of origin by winds when they are emitted in gaseous form or form of fine particulates. Rain ultimately washes the air having metallic pollutants and brings them to land and to water bodies. Heavy metals cannot be destroyed by biological degradation, and the heavy metals often encountered in the environment include lead, mercury, arsenic, chromium. These are known to cause toxic effects in living organisms. First, lead. So it's a common pollutant that can get into environment from a number of commonly used materials like paints, cosmetic, batteries, glass, and low-grade toys. By 2011, UN announced that it has been successful in phasing out leaded gasoline worldwide. Then, battery scrap also contains lead. It can get mixed up with water and food and create cumulative poisoning. India banned leaded petrol in 2018. 2000. And I think 2021 saw finally the end of leaded petrol, right? There was one country remaining which was using the lead petrol, and now I'm sorry. Yeah. So the last country was Algeria, which was using till 2021, but now it also has banned leaded petrol. Okay. Then the role of lead as a factor in development of neurodegenerative diseases has been well established. Exposure to this toxic heavy metal is associated with many dysfunctions of the central nervous system. Recent studies have established a possible link between lead exposure and Alzheimer's disease. And Alzheimer's is most common cause of dementia, memory loss, and loss of other cognitive abilities, mostly associated with learning and problem solving. Then you have maternal exposure to lead during pregnancy, which can cause developmental reprogramming, which can lead to higher risk and early onset of Alzheimer's disease in later life. Lead can cause irreversible behavioral disturbances, neurological damage, and other developmental problems in young children and babies. It's a carcinogen of the lungs and kidneys. So what causes lead poisoning? Then you have banned lead paint. Not sure, but मेरे ख्याल से Asian Paint ने इसका voucher निकाला था. Then you have fact, lead is toxic. So it's harmful to everyone and damages brain, kidneys, liver, blood, reproductive system. Young children are most vulnerable. Their nervous system are still developing and they absorb 4 to 5 times more than adults, which can cause intellectual disability, underperforming at school, behavioral issues. Then you have adults. So it lead to exposure. The exposure leads to increased risk of ischemic heart disease or stroke. And then in pregnant women, you have leading to problems in, just a minute, sorry. Yeah.
Development of fetus.
Yeah. Then you have developing fetus is being right. Okay. And this ischemic heart disease is basically जब आपके जो heart का वो रहता है I think vessels वो block हो जाते हैं, right? या वो damage हो जाते हैं due to lead. ठीक है. This by WHO. ठीक है. And there is no safe level of lead exposure. Yeah.
Right.
Important. Then you have the informal recycling of lead acid batteries is a leading contributor to lead poisoning in children living in low and middle income countries. 50% of lead acid batteries are being unsafely recycled in the informal economy. Other sources, so lead exposure include lead in water from the use of leaded pipes, lead from active industry such as mining and battery recycling, lead-based paints and pigments, leaded gasoline, which has declined considerably in recent decades, lead soldier in food cans, and lead in spices, cosmetics, Ayurvedic medicine, toys, and other consumer products.
Should I read it from here?
Sure.
Mercury. In Japan, mass mercury poisoning, that is Minamata disease, was observed in 1960s, caused by eating fish from Minamata Bay, which was contaminated with methyl mercury. अभी हमने थोड़ी देर पहले भी पढ़ा है, like methyl mercury is more carcinogenic than mercury itself, right? Mercury kills cells in the body and damages organs and thus impairs their functioning. Inhaling of mercury vapors is most dangerous than its ingestion, right? Chronic exposure causes lesions in the mouth and skin and neurological problems. Mercury thermometers used earlier are getting replaced by mercury-free thermometers, right? Then comes arsenic. Arsenic is associated with copper, iron, and silver ores, right? It's associated with copper, iron, and silver ores. Arsenic is also emitted from fossil fuel burning. Liquid effluents and fertilizer plants also contain arsenic. Groundwater contamination with arsenic is quite common in areas where it is present. ये किसी को disease का नाम पता है क्या arsenic से? ठीक है. So I'm just not able to recollect right now. इटाई तो कैडमियम की वजह से होती है ना. हाँ, सो आर्सेनिक का शायद ब्लैकफुट डिसीज है, इफ यू रिमेम्बर. ठीक है. क्रोनिक आर्सेनिक पॉइजनिंग causes melanosis and keratosis. Dark spots on the upper chest, back, and arms are known as melanosis. The next stage is keratosis, in which palms become hard and leads to loss of appetite, weight, diarrhea, gastrointestinal disturbances, and skin cancer. So surface waters are generally free from arsenic pollution and should be preferred for drinking and cooking. So this is about arsenic. Then comes cadmium. Mining, especially of zinc and metallurgical operations, right? Electroplating industries, etc., release cadmium in the environment. It may enter the human body by inhalation or from aquatic sources, including fish. It may cause hypertension, liver cirrhosis, brittle bones, kidney damage, and lung cancer. So, cadmium, इसका source क्या है? Mining of zinc and metallurgical operations, right? And cadmium का disease है itai. Itai disease first reported from Japan. 1965 was attributed to cadmium contamination in water and rice caused by the discharge of effluents from zinc smelter into a river, right? So this is cadmium. Then other heavy metals such as zinc, chromium, antimony, and tin enter food from cheap cooking utensils, right? So zinc, chromium, antimony, and tin. Preserved food stored in tin cans also cause contamination by tin. Zinc is a skin irritant and affects the pulmonary system. So, question कर लेते हैं. Due to improper, indiscriminate disposal of old and used computers or their parts, which of the following are released in the environment as e-waste? Beryllium, cadmium, chromium, heptachlor, mercury, lead, and plutonium. ठीक है. Guys, just try to solve this question. क्या definitely हो सकता है? I'll just mark accordingly. I think beryllium, cadmium, and mercury, lead तो definitely होगा, है ना? Is there anything which cannot be there in the computer e-waste? हाँ, मैं ये कह रही हूँ. Is there anything which cannot be there? I'm trying to eliminate the options. So, is there any heptachlor, right?
I think.
ठीक है, तो मैं 4. ठीक है. B, we are guessing it as B. Answer देख लेते हैं. B is the answer. So heptachlor is not there. Heptachlor is a chlorohydrocarbon, CHC, which is used as an insecticide. So this won't be there in the computer e-waste. So plutonium is a radioactive metal and hence is not used in computer. So we can either eliminate by heptachlor or plutonium. Right? Plutonium is a radioactive metal. Okay, moving on. E-waste management rules 2016. The government passed the first law on e-waste management in 2011 based on extended producer responsibility EPR. which put the onus on the producer for the management of final stages of the life of its product in an eco-friendly way by creating certain norms in tandem with the State Pollution Control Board. So e-waste 2016 rules are, 2011 rules are replaced with 2016 rules. Right? Okay. In India, extended producer responsibility was introduced as an important feature in which of the following? ये थोड़ा easy है, so C is the answer. Right? Okay, moving on. Salient features: manufacturer, dealer, refurbishes, and production. Yes.
जो EPR है, it does not apply to micro industries which comes under MSME.
Right. So in order to promote the micro industries, so they have been exempted under EPRA. Right. Then salient features: manufacturer, dealer, refurbishes, and producer responsibility organization have been introduced as an additional stakeholders in the rules. So manufacturer, dealer, refurbishers, and producer responsibility organizations. A new arrangement entitled Producer Responsibility Organization has been introduced to strengthen EPR further. PRO, a professional organization, would be, so this PRO is a professional organization, would be authorized or financed collectively or individually by producers to share the responsibility for collection, channelization of e-waste generated from the end-of-life products to ensure environmentally sound management of such e-waste roll. So I think this PRO is it's a professional organization financed collectively or individually by the producers themselves to share the responsibility for collection and channelization of e-waste. Right? Then option have been given for setting up of e-waste exchange, e-retailer, deposit refund scheme as additional channel for implementation of EPR by producers to ensure efficient channelization of e-waste. Right? What is deposit refund scheme? Has been introduced as an additional economic instrument wherein the producer charges an additional amount as a deposit at the time of sale of electrical and electronic equipment and returns it to the consumer along with the interest when the end of electrical and electronic equipment is returned. Right? So basically it's like how to say this, जैसे हम कोई प्लास्टिक वाटर बॉटल को लेते वक्त कोई कुछ डिपॉजिट लेते हैं जो सप्लायर रहता है, so when he returns the deposit when we return him the water bottle, so it's something like that. I hope I'm making sense. So this is deposit refund scheme. The e-waste exchange as an option has been provided in the rules as an independent market instrument offering assistance or independent electronic systems, offering services for sale and purchase of e-waste generated from end-of-life electrical and electronic equipment between agencies or organizations. Then comes compact fluorescent lamp CFL and mercury containing lamp bought under the purview of the rules. So CFL and mercury containing lamp are also under the rules, right? So over 21 products, Schedule 1 were included under the purview of the rules. The rules also extended its purview to components or consumables or parts of spares of electrical and electronic equipment, triply, along with their products. The rule has provisioned the target for the producers, which was missing in the first version of the rule. Now manufacturers are mandated to take back their sold products with recommended mechanisms. Right? The manufacturer is also now responsible to collect e-waste generated during the manufacture of any electrical and electronic equipment and channelize it for recycling or disposal and seek authorization from State Pollution Control Board. Right? Then the CPCB shall conduct random sampling of electrical and electronic equipment placed on the market to monitor and verify the compliance of law on restrictions of hazardous substances ROHs, and the cost for sampling and testing shall be borne by the producer. Right? So CPCB will conduct random samplings or is sampling and testing के लिए the costs are borne by the producer. Liability for damages caused to the environment or third party due to improper management of e-waste, including provision for levying financial penalty for violation of provisions of the rule, has been introduced. Guys, anything to be added here? So basically, these are the salient features of the rules. One is like there's a producer responsibility organization and the manufacturer, dealer, and refurbisher. All are included as the stakeholders. Sorry guys. Right. All are included as the stakeholders. And PRO is a professional organization. So it is funded individually or collectively by producers. Then it's a professional organization for e-waste management, and they can set up e-waste exchange, e-retailer, or deposit a refund scheme. These are the three things they can set up. So we have seen what is deposit refund scheme. Here CFLs and mercury containing lamps are also included in the rules, and 21 products of which are under Schedule 1 were included. Then in the rules, the rule has provision target for the producers, which was missing in the first version of the rule. Then CPCB will conduct random sampling, and that costs are borne by the producer, and liability for damages. Right. Moving on. Amendment in 2019. The amendment in rules has been done with the objective of channelizing the e-waste generated in the country towards authorized dismantler and recyclers to formalize the e-waste recycling sector. Right? So the amendment is to objective is to channelize the e-waste generated in the country towards authorized dismantlers and recyclers and formalize the e-waste sector. Then the collection targets under the provision of EPR in the rules have been revised, and the targets have been introduced for new producers who have started their sales operations recently. Salient features क्या है amendment में? वैसे amendment हुआ है 2019 में, and the rule इससे पहले 2016 था. Then salient features: the phase-wise collection targets for e-waste in weight shall be 10% of the quantity of waste generation, as indicated in the EPR plan during 2017-18, with a 10% increase every year until 2023. So phase-wise collection targets of e-waste, that is 10% of the quantity of waste generation. So, and it will keep increasing 10% every year until 2023. Right? After 2023 onwards, the target has been made 70% of the quantity of waste generation, as indicated in the EPR plan. Separate e-waste collection targets have been drafted for new producers, that is, those producers whose number of years of sales operation is less than the average lives of their products. The average lives of the products will be as per the guidelines issued by CPCB, right? Average lives of the products. The PROs, that is Producer Responsibility Organization, shall apply to the CPCB for registration. So PROs shall apply to CPCB for registration to undertake activities prescribed in the rules under the reduction of hazardous substances provision. Cost for sampling and testing shall be borne by the government. Right? If the product does not comply with ROHS provision, then the cost of the test will be borne by the producers. Right? So like there's a small the condition. Okay. Okay then. See you at 9:30, guys. Have a good evening. Bye.
Good evening.